tell us about the premise and why it's such a personal film?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much for coming to see this movie. The movie all takes place in Poland, to your south. In fact, some family of mine who survived the war went to Stockholm. We're not like in touch with them as a family, but I did know we had people who perhaps fled to Stockholm or survived and moved. I don't know who they are. Maybe you do, and if you meet anybody that looks like me, say hello. But this movie is about two cousins they're two fictional cousins. I play one of them, Kieran Culkin plays the other, who go to Poland to see where their family is from. They ultimately wind up at the house in this little village where their family lived, and we filmed it at the little house in the little village that my family lived. And so the movie has all these kind of like autobiographical locations, the story points, and all of the stories that the characters are telling in the movie are stories about my family, but ultimately the thing in its entirety is a work of fiction.
The idea about making this a tour that Benji and David are on, you actually got that from something you saw in a newspaper.
Yes, exactly. Well, the internet, but yes.
Same thing nowadays, right?
I don't know if you saw newspapers in Stockholm. That's news to us in America. But basically, this movie was initially set in Mongolia, and I was like 30 pages into the same story about these two guys who travel to Mongolia, not to see where their family's from, but for another reason. And as I was struggling to kind of finish that movie, an ad popped up on the internet for Auschwitz tours, and then in parentheses, with lunch. And I clicked on the ad, and it was for basically a upper middle class tour of the horrors of the Holocaust, while also maintaining kind of like the creature comforts of modern day, that you would stay in a nice hotel, but during the day you'd visit Auschwitz, and then, would eat a lovely dinner at night in Krakow, and then go to Treblinka the next day. And I just thought this was such an odd, awkward way to experience the Holocaust tourism, or any kind of trauma tourism. Like, what is the best way to experience that? And so the characters in this movie are kind of grappling with what is the best way to experience this incredibly fraught history.
For this movie, you cast yourself as David and Kieran Culkin as Benji, and you guys are going to see what an incredibly dynamic duo you guys are in this. But I have to ask you, is it true? Kieran Culkin says that you had never seen any of his work besides Home Alone before you cast him. Seems like a very risky casting process.
It was. I had not seen him act, but we had briefly acted together in an audition for a movie. And in that audition for the movie was Adventureland. And in that audition, he started kind of like attacking me in character, like kind of grabbing me. And he was really funny and dynamic and interesting, and also very aggressive with me. And when I was thinking about this movie and this dynamic between me and Kieran in this movie, A Real Pain, it was the exact dynamic we had in this audition, 12 years prior. And I think this just stayed in my mind as this guy who was incredibly comfortable in his own skin, very emotional, very funny, and also kind of aggressive. And you'll see in the movie, he hurts me in almost each scene.
He's brilliant, as are you. But I have to just quickly ask, Jesse, what exciting things were you doing on Sundays when the rest of us were watching Succession?
Oh, yes. I avoid anything that's very popular during the time when it's popular, because I'm a weak man who can't stand that things are very popular. And so for me, I just avoided it. And I don't know, football is on Sundays. And so I don't know, but I will go back now as an adult, mature person with less of a chip on my shoulder and watch it.
You were acting on stage already at the age of 14, I understand. How has your career as an actor informed you as a director, for example, now with Kieran?
I mean, my work as an actor for so long has just given me a sensitivity to what actors like to do on set, and so I'm always my background is in playwriting, and so I'm always trying to write things that actors want to do. As you'll see in this movie, Kieran plays this character who is incredibly complicated. Just as you feel like you understand him, he does something that is surprising, but there's always an underpinning of emotion. And I think because I've acted in so long, I've acted in things that are really great, and I've also acted in things that are not great. And you learn from both, kind of the things you like to do as an actor, and in general, what actors like to do. So you'll see the movie has an ensemble, which is the people going on this Holocaust tour. And you'll see everybody has moments to shine, something to do, some kind of emotional reality. And I think that just comes from being an actor and knowing how frustrating it can be when you don't.
I read you talked to Vanity Fair many years ago that when you auditioned for The Social Network, you had never seen anything with Mark Zuckerberg, not a video or anything. You based your audition on Aaron Sorkin's words, on his script, which makes me think that must have been a pretty special script, and that you... How has your screenwriting been impacted by people like Sorkin throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, that movie in particular is it's a dramatization of real people, but it's like a real emphasis on dramatization because he's such a brilliant writer. So it was not just like, trying to capture something in the momentary zeitgeist or something. So, that was a really special script. And again, one of the experiences that I have, and maybe there are a dozen in my life that I feel like were so informative in teaching me what the best way to write, the best way to act, and the best way to be creative is, and especially in this medium.
I want to go to your third role with A Real Pain that you have here as director, and talk a little bit about choices. Here in this film, you're navigating humor with the sort of backdrop of the Holocaust. There's a very powerful scene at a concentration camp. How did you approach this tonally?
Thanks. I kind of always write from the perspective that no one is ever going to read this, and oftentimes I'm true. I'm correct, but basically, so I was writing just everything that I think about the world. You'll see in the movie, characters are philosophizing and kind of contemplating their existence, and I'm just writing about all the things I'm interested in the world. And sometimes audiences like that, and sometimes they don't. In the case of this movie, it's shown that, I'm surprised that audiences are taking to it so wonderfully, because it's really just all the things I'm curious about in the world. Characters, exploring their own grief and then feeling guilt for not having enough grief, or having guilt for feeling too much grief about themselves and they don't deserve it. And so, but in terms of, directing, I guess I was just trying to kind of create the tone that I would most like to see in a movie that tackles this history. I feel like so often, and you're in Europe, so you understand this perhaps even more than I do. Movies movies about the Holocaust or about World War II can sometimes take a very self-serious tone, a very kind of self-important tone, as though the movie itself is doing this amazingly noble work by making a movie about the Holocaust. And I just don't feel that at all. I wanted to tell a story and create a tone that is what feels real to me, which is that third-generation Jewish Americans like me feel a lot of ambivalence about history, and they don't feel just one thing, and it's not all tears. It's also curiosity, it's also guilt, it's also embarrassment, and yes, tears as well, but it's all these things. So the movie and the comedic tone of the movie is just my sensibility.
What did you learn about generational trauma, maybe even more specifically third-generation trauma, while writing and thinking about this?
So my parents grew up never hearing about the Holocaust. My parents were 70, and they were born, 1953, 4. They grew up never hearing about the war because their parents, who had their parents' generation would either survived the war or been in America and lost all of their cousins, aunts, and uncles, never wanted to talk about it. And so it was kind of on me, if I was interested in it, it was on me to do all my own research. Basically, I was getting documents, meeting with people in Poland who were genealogists to try to find out more about my family, because my parents didn't know anything. My parents are brilliant people, but they just were never told about this, and essentially the message to them was, don't ask. And so for me, third generation, I would say it gives me enough of a distance and enough of a connection to really explore it. My kid, who's 7 years old, who actually plays my kid in the movie, as you'll soon see, will never meet a Holocaust survivor, probably, as an adult, he'll never meet one. And so he'll probably feel even more removed. So I may be in this kind of unusual spot where I'm old enough to meet people who survived the war and young enough to not feel like it's too big of a secret.
I understand that after making A Real Pain, you applied for and have now gotten Polish citizenship. Why was this important?
So my family lived in Poland a lot longer than they lived in New York. My family, we think of ourselves as New Yorkers, and we go to the theater, and we think of ourselves as New Yorkers, and we, go to Yankees games. But we were in Poland for a lot longer than we were in New York, and I just felt this very strange, abrupt severance of the relationship. My family had great relationships with Polish people where they lived, and I just was trying to reconnect to something that had been severed so awfully. I mean, they were taken out of their house in 1939, they were taken to the cemetery where we parked our trailers while we were shooting this movie, and shot in the cemetery, and that was the end of the family in Poland. And to me, it just feels like, how is it possible that no one in my family ever thought to reconnect to this place where we spent so much time? And so for me, in my connection, it just felt like I was trying to close a loop on something that had been severed too quickly.
I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you have some great people around this movie. For example, Emma Stone. Yes, that brilliant Oscar-winning Emma Stone is your producer on this film. You also worked with an incredible Polish team. Tell me a little bit about the whole process of making this film.
Oh yeah, it was like winning the lottery in every single department. Emma Stone is the producer. Obviously, you know her as an actor. She also happens to be an unbelievably savvy producer, from pre-production, where you're going over script changes, to hiring cinematographers, to shooting schedules, to marketing. She's just great at every single aspect. She's been around it so much, and she's really just incredibly savvy. The cinematographer you mentioned, Scandinavian audiences might know him from the movie Sweat, and the upcoming movie Girl with the Needle, with Magnus, who's a Danish director, or Danish-Polish rather, we just had the most incredible crew. Again, European audiences are probably familiar with the Łódź Film School in Poland, which produces some of the greatest artisans in the world. So we just had no shortage of amazing crew. And then when we came back to America to edit, we also had amazing editors, script. We just got lucky in every department. And the movie is a very personal thing, but it's also very collaborative. The movie is about my family, but it also relies on the artistry of people from all around the world. The movie truly is a co-production, a European-American production.
You've worked with everyone from, as directors now, I'm saying Fincher, Noah Baumbach. Are there references that you have brought with you from how they have worked into this one?
Yeah. I mean, I gave my cinematographer the movie Crimes and Misdemeanors, and I said I just wanted to be shot like this movie. It's a Woody Allen movie, and I've been in a few of his movies. And if you'll forgive me talking about him, if I can separate out, if you don't mind, personal and artistic, because he's left such a huge artistic mark. I told the cinematographer I wanted to be shot like this, which essentially is like kind of more traditional. I would call it somewhere in the middle of a European and American movie in terms of the style. Longer takes, actor choreography rather than quick cuts. Camera, character-centric photography, which is to say, being in a character's head, but not necessarily in this kind of modern American style of constantly following them handheld. And, so I was taking a lot from that style. In terms of like David Fincher or something, it's like, what can I possibly glean from somebody who, he's a technician, a master technician, and I'm trying to make a much more intimate character piece, so it's not like, I wish I had his sensibility, but the movie didn't really ask for that. I guess I was just trying to create something that felt both traditional, classic, and also thematically very modern.
And Going forward, now that you've done all these roles, what do you want? What is next for you? I mean, you've done Zuckerberg. Will you do Musk now?
I think that I read yesterday they're doing what is it, Sam Bankman-Fried. So I'm sure all of these, yes. Will come. No, my goal was really to write a musical.
Really?
That is my outstanding goal. And the next movie I'm directing is about a woman who joins a musical. And so I wrote the musical in the movie. And the great news for me is that it doesn't have to be good, because the musical she joins is not very good. And so it gave me the opportunity to write a musical without having the pressure of it having to be any good.
Will you be casting yourself in that?
I'll try to throw myself in somewhere, of course. Just to keep my health insurance. Yeah.
I want to go back and talk a little bit about how you worked with Kieran, because Kieran had just come off Succession, which is a very specific type of show where you're filming in 360. He can do anything he wants. There's not a lot of... This was a very, very different process for him. How did you, also being an actor, that work with this?
Well, no, thank you for asking. I had spent 3 months shot listing the movie with our cinematographer, not only shot listing it in an office, but actually we got Polish actors to come out and play our American cast before we shot it, and took images of every shot that we wanted to do. And then Kieran came out, and on the first day, I said, you'll be standing there, and I'll be standing here, and we're going to do the scene. And he said, I'm not going to stand here. Why would I stand here? And I said, I don't know. It's a beautiful shot. I can show you the monitor. And he goes, yeah, but I wouldn't stand here. I don't know what I would do, but I'm not going to stand here. I was like, okay. I mean, I never heard an actor say this kind of thing. So we took the camera off the planned dolly, and I said, okay, let's follow you around and see what you do. So we ran a scene. It's this big, funny scene in the movie where we're all going up and taking pictures on this monument. And I asked our cinematographer, Michał, just follow Kieran and see what he does. And he followed him, and we watched the playback. It was amazing. It was great, because Kieran is so spontaneous and alive, and it felt like I was boxing him in with these specific shots. So it was just great. We followed him around, and the movie worked better for it. So when Kieran was driving a scene in the movie, as opposed to my character driving the scene, we just followed him, and we kind of changed our plan a little bit. So some of the movie does have, you'll see a kind of handheld, very infrequently, there's 2 or 3 scenes that have this kind of handheld, what I would call, American indie style thing. But it works because his character is so alive and has so much vivaciousness that you want to stay with him and his energy.
Yeah, you had your hands full there. I understand he also wanted to not come on board the project several times before you started. He almost quit.
Yeah, I mean, Kieran has not done a job since Succession except our movie, and has still not signed on to any movie. He's going to do a play for a few months in the summer. He is just very picky. He doesn't want to leave his family, and he doesn't really want to work much. And so I didn't realize, when we were 2 weeks away from shooting, where you're already spending half your budget, to secure locations and pay for a million things and sets, he was trying to drop out because he didn't want to leave his family. And Emma Stone, who's our producer, as you mentioned, called him and basically guilted him into coming. She said, yeah, of course, you should stay home if you want to be with your kids. That's amazing. You're such a great dad. Of course, 50 people will lose their jobs in Poland. But no, you stay home. You stay home and have a good summer. And so she kind of guilt-tripped him into doing the movie. And thank God. He's so great, as you'll see. He's just phenomenal.
You guys are both phenomenal. I can't wait for this audience to see the movie, but I am now going to turn you over to the Stockholm Film Festival, where you are going to be getting the Stockholm Achievement Award. Congratulations. Thank you so much for talking to me and for taking the time, and here is Git.
Yes, Eisenberg, thank you for a wonderful conversation. We miss you here in Stockholm, of course, but we hope to get you back with your next film. So here I'm standing with a very tiny little horse, but we will send it to you, and you will feel it's quite heavy. It says to be one of the world's heaviest prize. So we're trying to do our best here in Sweden.
Wow.
So the motivation. So This year's Stockholm Achievement Award is presented to a precise actor and director whose intellect and observation skill has become a sort of hallmark that has marked every magnetic role, whether he plays a child of divorce in Brooklyn, Lex Luthor, or the founder of Facebook. It is unsurprising that the same sharpness, humor, and richness of thought are also reflected in the plays, screenplays, and articles that he writes in his impressive output. So this year's Stockholm Achievement Award is presented to filmmaker and actor Jesse Eisenberg.
That you have the heaviest award, and I'm going to have to rearrange some stuff in my house to accommodate this. Thank you so much. Also, if you've seen me in all of these movies, you would probably know that I'm not the person to receive the heaviest of anything. So I really do appreciate you view my body as perhaps more capable than it really is. But thank you so much for this award. My one regret of not only this movie and this entire publicity process is that I'm not in Stockholm. For months, I've been telling everybody that I'm going to Stockholm. I have been to every part of the universe, including lying to the Chinese government to get into Tibet. And the only place on earth I want to go is Scandinavia, and my wife has been there like many dozen times, and it's just like, yes, you'll have to go on your own, because she's been there and she likes to go to new places. And so my dream is to go to Scandinavia, and this was my opportunity. And then I got food poisoning in Poland 4 days ago, and I was grounded. You know, just I was flying to LA and I got sick, and I've just been like grounded sick here. And I'm so sorry and so appreciative that that you invited me, and so sorry that I can't come. Making this movie, I just want to say, like, what I wanted to do with this movie was make an American movie, but in Europe, and I wanted to have the feeling that this movie could play in Europe and could play in, you know, in the region, and not feel like it was too much of an outsider's take on Europe, that it had a little bit of an insider's take, because my family is from there. And as I said earlier, my family, after the war, some of them fled to Stockholm, and I'm very eager to find out who they are and meet them. I know I have cousins in Stockholm. And when it was described to me that I have family in Stockholm, it was described to me as they were the lucky ones, you know, that made it to your beautiful country. And so once again, just feel sorry that I wish I could be there. Thank you so much for the award. I hope you like the movie like I do, and feel that it has some European blood coursing through its veins, which is the blood of my ancestors. Thank you so much. What a great honor.
We have a fantastic audience here, so just, I think I heard a promise there. Next film, you will come to Stockholm, right?
I'll be there on day one, yes.